No, it's true. You were alive.
I've been a couple years.
Oh, it's been.
No.
It is. January 31st.
I spent a lot of time. I was listening.
You're on.
You said. Just so you know, Becker, mine had the free flight on. Yeah.
We're on live, so yes, we are. And
Senator, bring that right in. Go back to TSA and let's see what happens.
So
You're laughing now.
So we are Friday, January 31st. This is the Senate Transportation Committee. My name is Rich Westman. I'm chair of the Transportation Committee. And we are here this morning, starting off our day with the Burlington International Airport. And if we could get you to introduce yourselves.
I'm sorry. My name is Jeff Bartley. I am the Director of Innovation and Marketing for the Patrick Leahy Burlington International Airport. I'm here with our marketing assistant, Alex, from my team.
And I'm Nick Longo. I'm the Director of Aviation at the Patrick Leahy Burlington International Airport. I'm also here with my team, Jesse Sprague, who is joining us as well. And happy to just go right into it if that works for you.
The chairs are yours.
Excellent. Thank you so much. First, thanks for having us. Thanks for having us first thing in the morning. We have a short presentation for you. Today is really just kind of an introduction of who we are, not just the team, but the airport as well, what we're doing, what our next steps are. We have a lot happening at the airport. But before I head into that, I think I would be remiss to kind of just mention some of the things that have been happening in Washington, D.C. Obviously, when we talk about and hear about and see anything related to the aviation industry, especially as it could happen, all right, it's a very safe industry, extremely well kept, especially the women and men throughout the industry, throughout the federal government, but it definitely pulls some heartstrings when we look at all of the victims and certainly all the help in the first responders. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and say that as we continue at the airport, safety, everything that we're talking about, safety is our top priority. Whether we're talking about painting our lines out on our runway or building a new terminal or readdressing parking garage, everything we do is about safety. And that's really the motto of the industry, in my opinion. Yep, we're up and live. So what we have happening at the airport is quite a bit. We have growth. We have record numbers going through the airport as far as passengers, routes, expansion with our terminal building, right sizing our buildings to make sure that we can continue moving forward with the industry and the growth and changes of the industry. Of course, that comes with a couple of challenges, and making sure not just safety, but some other initiatives that are also high priority. Our carbon footprint is reduced wherever we can possibly do that. One thing that I've been saying recently is, and this is in acknowledgement of all the hard work of the Department of Public Works and all of the highways and systems to get to the airport. But you can build that 1 mile of road and you can travel 1 mile, right? But you build 1 mile of runway, you can travel the world. And that's really our motto at the airport, where we're building that 1 mile runway. In fact, we have a 1.5 mile long runway, and we strive to increase our capacity and serve the people and the demand that is out of this airport.
So we're considered a small hub airport. We see about 1.4 million passengers on a yearly basis, about 700 and so fly in, fly out. One thing we are very proud of is we're actually the second busiest airport in New England when you talk about operations. This is not just commercial, but it's a combination of Vermont Flight Academy, Beta Technologies, VTAG, and all the cargo, FedEx, combined. We are the second busiest airport in New England. We're super proud about that. We are obviously one of the largest entry points to the state of Vermont, particularly for business travel out of the state. Roughly 60% of our travelers are business related. And then we like to brag that we're a source of innovation. When you look at what's happening with Beta Technologies, Pratt & Whitney and other of our tenants on the airfield, but also Curiosity. We have the Vermont Flight Academy, Burlington Technical College is getting up off the ground. We are a great place for people interested in aviation to learn how to fix the planes, how to become pilots themselves, or any of the many other facets of the aviation industry. And of course, we're the home of the Vermont National Guard, the Air Guard, and the Army Guard as well. Our airline partners, we have 6 right now. We have the 3 of the major ones in Delta, United, and American Airlines. Sun Country flies seasonally to Minneapolis. And last year, we started services with Breeze Airways, where they have 4 nonstop destinations right now, 3 of them in Florida and 1 in Raleigh, Durham, which is the first time we've ever had a direct flight to Raleigh. We're pretty proud of that. And then recently, about a month ago, we welcomed back Frontier Airways, and they're doing nonstop service to Orlando and Tampa, and we're going to continue to push them maybe to expand services to the west, particularly Denver.
Right, didn't they used to have it, the Frontier has it?
They did, yep.
There was a seasonal flight that they swap back and forth between Orlando and Denver, and that's exactly.
I'm from
what-
Colorado, so it was helpful for me.
Good. It's coming back.
My point was last week.
It's all about. We're
Which-
doing
which-
good
which
this
one?
morning. It's all about you. He's got his free plane ticket, you know, where.
Observation tower.
So we are proud. We have the most nonstop destinations that we've had dated back to 1990, probably even further than that. We have 18 destinations. We are constantly looking to expand that, particularly to Southern Florida, our year-round services to Denver, and other locations.
So Denver is coming back early this year in May, not with Frontier, but with United Airlines, which United, of course, has a much larger hub out of the Denver airport.
Why Sun Country in Minneapolis? I don't think it was Minneapolis, the Sun Country.
So Minneapolis is actually Sun Country's home base. That's their headquarters and that's their base of operations. Yeah.
Misconception of the.
We're not gonna be
So their motto is bringing Minnesotians, whatever that, folks from Minnesota, down to warmer destinations to the Sun Country. Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to fly that a lot. My kids went to school out there and they have a lot too. It's a big insurance hub.
Yeah,
So they go to Connecticut, the heart.
that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
And we offer more at the airfield than just our commercial services. Our current airfield tenants, and we have tenants off of the airfield as well, include Aerodyne, Beta Technologies, which you're familiar with, Burlington Technical College, FedEx, Heritage Aviation, the NOAA, our weather agency, Pratt & Whitney Canada, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is the largest repair unit in this region. University of Vermont Medical Center.
In the country. Pratt & Whitney Canada has the largest facility at Burlington Airport in the country.
Really?
Pratt
So-
and Whitney or?
Pratt & Whitney Canada. Yeah, different division than Pratt.
And of course, UVM Medical Center, Air National Guard, Army National Guard, and then the Vermont Flight Academy.
Can I just ask, so it's FedEx, they've probably increased a lot, right?
They have a large portion of our operations as if you see the flight coming in pretty much on time every single day, 9 a.m. Is the FedEx 757 aircraft. They've increased that certainly through the pandemic and beyond. In fact, we're looking to expand our cargo facilities because we have other unnamed competitive companies to FedEx. You can probably imagine who that company
Oh,
might be
interesting.
that wants to expand in the airport as well.
So you have more than FedEx in the airport?
FedEx
Of
and
that type.
UPS, yeah, that's right.
Okay.
FedEx and UPS are both operating at the airport.
Okay.
FedEx, though, has a much larger volume. UPS contracts with smaller single and dual propeller engine aircraft to travel through the region. They don't have a large aircraft that goes to their base hubs. That's potentially what we're trying to secure.
Interesting.
So as we look at the economic value, I think this is a big part of our presentation. And Jeff explained a lot of the inspiration and the communication that we have with our partners. That inspires me too. Just a very quick background on myself. I think aviation is in my blood through my grandparents. I went to school specifically for airport management and air traffic control. I was an air traffic controller down in New York City for a few years, and I moved up here because my real passion is the operations and the logistics of an airport operation. So as we look at this economic impact to our region, to our state, and what we're doing next, which is literally what we're going to be talking to you about, the value of what we do is critical to the infrastructure and to the people of this state and truly this region, because we serve beyond just Vermont, upstate New Hampshire, upstate New York, and of course our partners and our neighbors to the north of the border into Canada. Our valuation just a few years ago, keep that in mind, this was pre-pandemic numbers, was just over $1 billion to the region. That includes 5,000 jobs. That includes a significant amount of taxes that come through local and state resources, and a massive amount of salaries, of course. To me, this is a very low number. We have to update this number, and we are updating this number. $1 billion was pre-Beta securing a lease, a long-term lease with us, pre-Pratt & Whitney, now being a very large, significant source of repair and maintenance for engines in the area, as well as the educational component throughout the airport.
I want to keep this all light in it. I will tell you that all of the economic and the tentacles that go out from the airport and everything, it's why people say it should be a regional airport.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's been a conversation for many years, and it's a tricky conversation.
Not the day my grandmother took off from the airport.
It's a
In
different
the
airport.
1920s, in a biplane, in her first flight. And it's not the days of the 1960s when the Dixie Duck was coming in. Do you remember the old Mohawk black and white plane? Yes, you do.
Yeah,
So,
it's a different airport. And my good friend and sometimes my mentor Ed Kolodny once told me, as he was running UVA Medical Center and Mohawk and other airlines, which eventually turned into U.S. Airways, which now is called American Airlines. Ed Kolodny was saying those same things, right? This is a large hub airport. Obviously, the complexities of a regionalization airport is very different.
and I don't say that but the whole region wants the airport to do well and all of that, but the whole area,
Yeah.
when the jets go over Williston and you hear complaints, they feel like they're not heard.
Yeah. And those are great points, and certainly something I would love to talk about too. And it allows me a little bit of space to talk about some of the help that we do need at the airport too. There's a lot of things that are happening financially and creating one of the healthiest airports that we've had in 15 plus years, with the recent announcement of our credit agency now giving us our highest credit that we've received in 15 years. We receive about $500,000 a year from the state of Vermont. Yet those taxes are pretty significant. Obviously, there's between $35+ million of taxes that directly support the state and the area and the region. But more specifically, there's fuel taxes that are approaching $3 million a year that must be remaining with an aviation program. So those types of help that we would need to support a capital program like this, which is around $140 million over the next couple of years, is critically important to help with noise mitigation efforts, as well as our airfield and runway rehabilitation, and certainly our capacity constraints that we have within our terminals. This is just a quick breakdown. I won't spend too much time on this particular slide. So like I said, the state grant funds do support us at about $2.5 million over 5 years. That's at $500,000 per year, or about 1.8% of our total capital program. That's something that we certainly are growing, and this is not a request. We're not here to talk about financial requests, but eventually we do need to ask for support on additional capital programs. Now, with that said, I also have the privilege of serving on the Vermont Aviation Advisory Council. You're the state council, and making sure that the health of aviation in Vermont is strong, not just at Burlington, but at every state airport. A little bit more about my background. I too am a private pilot. I received my pilot's license at 17 years old, and I purchased a plane just a few years ago. Unfortunately, it's no longer with us. It flipped in a nasty windstorm, but that was not at the Burlington Airport. That was with the support of the state system and other state airports. And that ecosystem of state aviation programs is critical to not just the Burlington, not just Chittenden County, but the entire state as a whole. So as the director of the Burlington Airport, I want you to know that it's equally important to me as a total ecosystem.
Go ahead.
So this is millions. Doesn't say that, but you might want to put that on the chart. Oh, it is upside zeros.
Yep.
Okay, and are you going to talk about governance? Is there a slide on here?
We're not talking about governance today, unless there's some questions regarding that.
Just because, yeah, in the past, but that maybe just because Senator Chittenden was on the committee, we talked about it quite a bit in bills, and I think there's probably members of the committee that don't know when we talk about being a regional airport, what that would mean and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. Yes, there were past conversations about that, and it sounds like maybe future conversations about that. One of the risks associated with it is there's a significant amount of bonds that we have on the airport that today are on the taxpayers of the city of Burlington. So there are complexities to a regionalization and major success stories of making sure that we're advocating larger than just our county. Right now I'm coming in as a neutral party to a regionalization conversation. There are pros and cons to that conversation. Right now, I think it would be a very difficult scenario if there were regionalization conversations. But again, I see pros associated with it.
I don't think we should get into that. Those are long history.
That's right.
And what you just said is what people have said for years. So, we aren't going to solve that issue, and we want to hear the successes. What this doesn't show, though, is a lot of the money going into the businesses that have moved in along the airport with state money from the Commerce Agency and that. So there is a lot of money from all over the state, from the region, and all of them. And the senator from Washington is absolutely right that someday this is going to pop up, and just by throwing up a flag, this is complicated. It won't be all right. And but there are ties for all of us, and we're all invested in the airport doing well because it's for the whole area. But we're tied to the history of, when this was a much smaller place and aviation was not as big a deal, and it was the new shiny thing. And there was one bench at the airport.
Yeah, I think you said that well, that it is a complex issue, and I appreciate that. Yeah. Let's talk about successes. So 2024, our calendar year, we had major successes in the airport. This is a really fun picture of Jeff and his team's new initiatives of our new mascot, Aero, the Griffin, bringing in a lot of really creative interest into the airport. But with that also was a partnership with Breeze and Frontier, like we talked about before, partnerships and our community partnerships with local school districts and the UVM Medical Center and really beyond, with programs for kids utilizing a resource like this. Airlines are our number one conversation that we have, I think, every single year. How can we make sure we're growing, or as the industry says, upgauging, getting smaller planes into larger, more efficient planes to drive costs down at the airport, ticket prices down. So meeting with airlines and really encouraging growth at this airport and within this region. You want to talk about some events?
Yeah, we hosted the Eclipse, like everybody did.
Yeah.
You hosted. I hosted it one.
Thank you so much.
We welcomed about 800 people onto the airfield
Oh, wow.
for the event. We had bands, we had some food, some alcohol, games. Beta had a presence there with their plane. It was really cool, and it showed the collaboration. The previous slide, we talked about the 5,000 jobs that we have at the airport. Only 50 to 60 of them are our direct employees. So that's supporting all the Beta employees, AirGuard, UVM, etc. And so we were able to pull it off. But it took a huge collaboration with TSA, with Beta Technologies, our operations team, to be able to pull this off. And it was so successful that the national organizations actually had Nick and I come present to them to show them how we were able to make it happen. We post, obviously, being the largest airport in Vermont, a lot of people go through it. We see Senator Welch on a regular basis. We welcomed an Olympian, the rugby player. It was a lot of fun, awesome person. And then we welcome community events, or community groups, Cub Scouts, students, college students, and anybody interested in aviation or what's going on at the airport. We set up tours for them.
Cool.
One airline.
All right.
65.
So talking about the airport a little bit, we are faced with some challenges. You've talked about the history over time. If you walk through the airport right now, Nick likes to refer to as a Willy Wonka effect as you're walking from our new terminal all the way through, winding down. There is the new airport was built about 25 years ago for regional aircraft. So we're talking about smaller planes, 50 to 60 passengers. And this gate 3 through 6 right here, we're now seeing larger mainland aircraft coming in, 737s and larger. It gets very crowded. It's not intended with the usage. And obviously with an influx of more passengers all at once, we had issues with security. We had 2 different TSA entry points. We've solved that solution with our consolidated security checkpoint, but also more amenities that we need. Next Wednesday, we're actually going to be announcing a new concessionaire coming into the airport that we're super, super excited about. We have a wonderful relationship with Skinny Pancake, but we need more to service all of our passengers.
So they're staying at that old place is going to get somebody in there, where I used to have that on the second floor.
It used to be called One Flight Up. So that's the kitchen. There's no longer a restaurant space or anything like that, but there is new space in a terminal project that we opened up 2 years ago. There's many more opportunities throughout the terminal.
With the new expansions, Skinny Pancake went from 2 to 1, and there's just less eating space.
There's actually 3 restaurants at Skinny Pancake, so they have one in each concourse and one pre-security. And then we're going to be adding additional concessions. Hudson News, our news and gift store, also has 3 locations throughout our terminal.
But that's all been in flux.
No, nothing's changed with the Skinny Pancake. They've been there for about 10 years in that capacity.
Upstairs, when they used to be, when you had the ramp that is all gone now.
Yep.
There was one there, and that left, and then there was kind of an interim, but
They have a bar now.
Yep, they have 2 full bars.
well, they had the bars before, so.
Yep.
How long you been here?
I've been working at the airport for 13 years.
13?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when we talk about our opportunities in the market, we are still losing about 35% of our passengers in our catchment area to Boston. And a lot of those are either international flights or they were looking for direct flights, mostly to Florida. With the addition of Breeze and Frontier to those markets, we think we're beginning to capture some of those. And we still have not really seen the pre-COVID traffic from Canada yet. It's slowly starting to inch up, but we're hoping to see more expansion on that front.
May I ask you a question? So, first, are y'all coming back? Cause I don't want to ask too many questions. I don't know. So what is are those circles your,
The one.
area? Is that your service area? The black circle, the bigger
No.
one?
So that black circle is kind of what's called our airspace.
Okay.
So that's.
So what is your service area?
So our service area goes from the eastern townships of Montreal, eastern Montreal, all the way over to Sherbrooke, and then down to about halfway through Vermont. And once you get into southern Vermont, obviously folks are making intuitive and smart choices on traveling
Right,
distances.
because I live in Brattleboro and
That's right.
I go south.
And we
to Bradley.
completely understand that. So this is
Yeah.
really a pretty large market area. Clinton County, upstate New York.
Yeah.
It does go into the very Littleton, New Hampshire, and kind of the northern part of New Hampshire, and then about halfway down into Vermont.
Okay.
That's our regional area.
Something that would help folks farther away, I think, use you is if there was a connection from Amtrak or good bus connections, but bus isn't as good as train.
Yeah.
So just a way to get to you without having a car.
Mm.
That would
Yeah.
might be a good long-term thing.
Yeah,
If you're not
yeah.
already thinking about that.
Yeah, we are. Train is tough for us.
But it's not there
Different-
yet.
different- It's not there yet.
Yeah.
But bus service and public transportation is a very large topic point for
Yeah.
us over the last couple of years.
And you could have a connector that served just the railroad or just the airport from the railroad.
Yeah, and we do have the city bus and working with GMT and our
Yeah, just
transportation
The
services.
city buses is more complicated.
And
the shuttles
funding
that,
restrictions there too. Yeah,
Yeah.
it makes it very difficult.
Yeah.
So we talk about where we are losing our passengers. These are presentations that we give to all of our commercial partners on a regular basis. We go to a conference every year called Jumpstart, where it's literally speed dating with these airlines. You sign up ahead of time, they have to approve you, and you get 15 minutes to pitch to them. That's really where we started to make headway with Frontier in this last year, welcoming them and showing them that the blue area, these are the passengers that we are retaining in that market on a daily basis. The red is where we are losing and where those passengers are going to. Obviously, Florida is huge. These numbers are from Q3 of 2023. So there's pre-Breeze and pre-Frontier. So we think we've definitely made some progress on that. But these are the top 25 markets from our passengers on a daily basis.
When you say our passengers, that's that catchment area, just like halfway through Vermont and the eastern townships, like that circle.
You got it. So that circle, that area, this is every single passenger in there of that area. The blue bars on there are flying out of Burlington. The red bars are flying out of alternate airports. Yeah, mostly Boston, but alternate airports. That's right. Yeah.
that is in your area.
Not in our market area,
Oh.
but folks drive to
Oh,
Boston.
drive to Boston.
That's right. Yeah.
Manchester.
Boston doesn't show up on there, or am I missing it?
There are no flights to Boston.
There's no flights.
So this isn't flights that we serve. This is flights that people go to. So like if you look at Los Angeles Basin, we don't have any nonstop service to the Los Angeles area. But if you add 49 plus 54, about 100 people per day each way go to the Los Angeles Basin out of that market area. Of that 100 people, about 50 of those people fly out of Burlington
And how do you-
per day each way.
How do you know where somebody from Montpelier is flying if they don't fly at BPD? It's just that public information.
It's right. It's all, the airlines all report that to the Department of Transportation. And then that reported, we have ways to populate all that data and using those resources.
We constantly get questions and on social media and our customer service portals, adding services here. We need to, or to whoever it is. And we don't have that ability to just go to United and say, we want you to fly to Nashville now. It's a process. They need to make sure they have the crews. It makes sense. One point that we didn't discuss is in New England, we have the lowest cost that we charge to the airlines. Which is a misnomer when it comes to our ticketing price. And we're not charging them as much as a lot of the competitors that we're seeing in here. I don't know if you want to expand upon that.
Yeah.
So, and Jeff left, not because we didn't have, the the people traveling and that they left basically because of airspace.
In New York, yep.
And is there, how much of a problem is that? Is there any hope that we would get JetBlue back in the future? And besides, I would think that would be important, but besides that, where's the most important, that if we could get somebody to come and expand airspace into, where would that be?
100% our New York market. That's where we need additional capacity. You're 100% correct on the airspace and the congestion constraints, specifically in the New York market. The FAA limited the number of flights into that market. So JetBlue had to, required to reduce their flights into that market. Not just JetBlue, also Delta. Delta reduced their market share for us out of that market, along with dozens of other airports throughout the United States. What's really important about JetBlue, 70% of the passengers on a JetBlue flight out of Burlington to go to New York were flying to Florida. They were only connecting through New York. That doesn't alleviate New York, you can see, is our top market. That's our top final destination that we go to. We already service 200 plus passengers a day each way to that market. But we still need to increase the capacity. The demand is growing for that New York area market. But Florida and some of these top 10 destinations is also our priority to make sure not just that we're adding markets, but we're adding competition. That's what really drives the airline ticket prices to a reasonable rate to be comparable. We also are really proud to say we are the lowest cost airport in New England. We always charge on what's called a cost per enplanement or cost per passenger, CPE. Our CPE is the lowest in the New England market to encourage growth. And then we use other funding sources like our industrial revenue streams and our general aviation fees to grow
How
those.
much of that shows up in the plane ticket?
That's hard to tell, right? Because we don't control the plane ticket. The airlines control that dynamic pricing of the plane ticket. Right now, we charge about $8 per passenger for a plane, for an aircraft, for an airline to come in, plus an additional $4.50, which is a federal program to retain passengers.
Coming and outgoing, or just only for in?
Only outgoing. Yeah.
And for example, if you were at someplace, Logan or, across the border at Trudeau, how much would that charge be?
From that airport, Canadian airports, I don't know. It's really, really hard to get the information from their equivalent of their Department of Transportation, as well as additional taxes. There are a significant amount of taxes in Canada that benefits US markets because it is more expensive when you're flying from a Canadian airport into the United States. International is a totally different story.
International, I go to Montreal a lot.
Yeah, that's right. When you fly international, especially on nonstop flights, it's extremely difficult to compete in that market from a small regional airport.
And even without that, if you're flying to Gatwick, it's just easier not to have to switch.
Yeah, that's right. And the costs to operate a program like that is significant. The U.S. Customs and Border Patrol requires payment on an annual basis to allow an inspection station at the actual airport. What we're really looking forward to is pre-clearance at the airports that you're going to. Dublin is a great example of that, where U.S. Customs and Border Patrol are stationed there. You pre-cleared U.S. Customs in Dublin to fly to the United States, and then you never talk to a customs agent again. That's really where small hub airports would gain traction.
Yeah, it's the cheapest to take the JetBlue and with their relationship with Aer Lingus and go to either Shannon or Dublin.
Yeah.
From Burlington that way. It's the loss not having JetBlue.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And again, we weren't the only market. JetBlue had a major philosophy change in the last year. In fact, the moment that we found out, Jeff and I and our team flew down to the headquarters of JetBlue and met with the CEO, Robin Hayes, and had a conversation with him of those reasons for moving. And those revenues and profits were really, really challenging for JetBlue at the time. Then you add and introduce the capacity constraints in the New York market. Really, really, really difficult for JetBlue. But again, it's the routes that we're looking for. We need to increase the routes of the New York market, and that's a big
And-
area.
So where is the next question? Where is the most likely place that if you could expand to in your wildest dreams, where would it be?
Yeah, I think there's some airlines that we would like to increase existing service. Denver is probably our biggest market that we need year-round service on. And some competition on whether it's United or Frontier or both of those services. This list right here, this is our top one. What's that? Salt Lake is on here. It's number 22. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. And on the Boston front, it's really challenging to see Boston on a chart like this, especially to sell that to an airline. We've tried Boston with various airlines over the last few years, and they've struggled with it because a lot of airlines, Southwest being the biggest, one of the biggest one, along with the legacy carriers, operate out of Boston Airport, and they're already capturing our passengers, right? So the airlines struggle to add an additional cost to go from Burlington to Boston and then beyond. What we struggle with is collecting the data of the folks that need to go to Boston on a business trip, or that's their final destination, and using an airport to do that. We don't have that data because right now that data is driving. And we don't have that statistic to really push across the board.
Do you have any overlap with the state airports with like Cape Air or private jets that would choose between ATV and like the other airstrips and one outside of
No, because right now
the cost is cheaper and they're closer to where they want to go. They
Yeah.
can go to the small.
that,
No
that's right.
competition.
There's no competition, including Plattsburgh. Rutland and Plattsburgh specifically are federally subsidized, so there's federal funds that go into those airports, into the airlines that serve those airports to guarantee revenue. Burlington is too large for that, so we don't qualify for that subsidization. But no matter what, it's critically important, right? The Boston flight, especially out of central Vermont, is really good for the area and good for the region, but it's a very different market, very different.
But Heritage would do those kind of flights.
Heritage has a significant amount of flights, charter, corporate, international flights. We do have a U.S. Customs facility at the airport, and they do a lot of international flights, especially for the Canadian market and across the ocean. Yeah.
Is there the other airline that made the brief attempt that was Porter? And I always thought, flying to the airport in the middle of town was, for anybody here that might have wanted to use Porter, it lacked the connections to other places. So Pearson would have been better.
Way better. Yep.
Than that. Is there any talks with Porter about ever thinking about stuff again? Because there's a lot of people from Toronto that come here to ski.
Yeah.
But it is but for any of us that were going to fly, we probably were going to want to fly internationally.
Yeah, that's right. I'm glad you brought that up. And the answer is yes. We've had continuous conversations with Porter to go into the Billy Bishop Airport, which is that island airport out of Toronto. They are not a pre-cleared airport, and that's one of the challenges there. Pearson is a pre-cleared airport. So we've also had conversations with Air Canada and Jazz Airlines, which is a subsidiary of Air Canada, to operate out of that route too, because of the decrease in cost because of pre-clearance. We've had amazing partnerships with the state and the transportation and the commerce and the departments of this state. Porter always needed subsidies to continue their operation. They had about a 65 seat aircraft. They were probably at 20%, 30% load factors, 20% full on on that airplane. That also drove U.S. Customs and Border Patrol to operate a little bit differently out of our airport because of the quantity of people. They're not necessarily ready for that. They're ready for the corporate and private aircraft, which maybe has 10 people on an aircraft at the max. But yes, Porter and other Canadian airlines to service the Toronto market is definitely on our list.
Yeah, well, WestJet is
In West,
a partner of Delta.
yeah,
So,
yep,
I've always, because it's such an international hub, it's more like flying to New York.
that's right.
Toronto is
That's right.
because they have such an international presence.
That's right. I had the privilege of flying over to WestJet's headquarters a couple of years ago to talk about that very issue, and they're way over in the western
Calgary.
in Calgary. Yeah, yep, very good.
So I want to be respectful of time too. I think we're about 10 minutes past. Do you want us to motor through things or?
If you can wrap it up in 5 minutes,
Okay.
I'll give you time to wrap it up.
Oh, excellent.
You can see where our interest lies. So next,
We have the rail folks next.
Yep. we do.
So we have started breaking ground on our new terminal, which we call Project Next. It's going to be an expansion on the north side of the terminal. You think about that finger where American Airlines is, it's going from that spot north, almost all the way to the traffic control tower. And the need for that, as we talked about the regional airplanes that we were taking in, now we have these larger airplanes coming in. We need to be able to welcome them. And there are times when some of these planes coming in overlap our taxiway system because they're so big, or we have to tell the airlines you can't bring in certain planes. And that's one of the ways that we're going to try to help reduce with the cost or address the cost issue is bring in more capacity. It's not necessarily more flights that we're going to be able to do in the short term, but if we can bring in more larger planes, it's going to set us up for the future.
Yeah, and just maybe two more slides here for you. This one, I think, goes to our earlier conversation. Go back to the last slide, where we have an observation tower, which is really highly utilized in the old air traffic control tower, the real air traffic control that folks can use right now. It's past security, so you have to have an airline ticket until we introduce a new program where anybody will be able to go through security, whether you have a ticket or not. That's a new program that we're going to be introducing later. But this is our new observation tower that we're building right now. Not only will be an interior, it'll also have an exterior patio and event space. But the whole idea of our program of building, or the things that we can control from a sustainability perspective, is to make sure that we're heating and cooling this building on site with a geothermal field. We have solar electricity that's going to be supporting Burlington Electric Department and Green Mountain Power resources. And we worked with the Northern Border Regional Commission to access $1.8 million. This will be a fully mass timber building as well. So we're not going to be using steel to do this building. And that all rolls into our sustainability program to reduce our carbon emissions. We are happy to say that we also received our carbon accreditation this year, which really puts an eye on us to make sure we are committed long-term to reducing our carbon, changing to a fully electric fleet, changing our building profiles and our building methodologies, working with our partners like Beta Technologies to actually work into the field of flying, when that's the biggest source of our greenhouse gas emissions, which of course is.
When you say electrifying the fleet, you mean your ground?
Sorry, my ground fleet. Yeah. And not only our ground fleet, but also airline ground fleet as well. That support equipment, the tugs and the baggage carts as well.
Which would be good for electricity. Seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we'll leave you with that. I really appreciate the conversation. I think I would love to continue additional conversations individually and as a group. And thank you very much again for the time and extra time that you gave us today.
Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, very nice to meet you.
That was the only. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you a story.
You mind if I take a peek?
When I went to basic training, I have a picture, I'll show it to you sometime of me standing in wide wheel corduroy pants. With my suitcase was a pillowcase with my belongings in it, standing outside the old airport. It was a trailer at the time when you were building the new one.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
goes back before your time.
Define before your
I
time.
don't believe that.
Was it Mohawk that you flew? Because Mohawk was
You
the
know,
only.
I was scared to death. It was my first flight.
That
I
was
was going in the army.
Oh,
wow.
I don't know.
It was a black and white with jet prop,
Thank
prop
you.
plane.
Now I have to
Oh,
remember.
yeah.
Dixie Duck.
Yeah.
That's what we all called it.
Yeah.
So the original tower is still there. It's got the beacon on top. We have a picture of Amelia Earhart sticking her head out the window waving.
Yeah, my
Out of our
grandmother met her.
original
She
track.
came to White River Junction too.
That's
They
so
had-
cool.
yeah.
My
That's
grandmother was at the airport.
What?
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
My grandmother.
But Amelia,
Take the seat.
Yeah, that's fine.
How are you?
He's great.
Are you Steve? Okay.
Up in the sky to down on the rail. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where's our boats? You didn't.
We call it.
So we're sorry we're late. But we're not in a rush with you either, so we go over that. But, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Well, thanks for taking the time to have us in today. Appreciate it. Sheldon Houghton, President of Vermont Rail System. We have Mary Ann Michaels in the back as well, and Peter Young here as well. So, if it works for you folks, I'm just gonna kind of do a brief overview of Vermont Rail System, and then probably just ask some questions if that works.
The chair's yours, so go ahead and talk to us and then we'll have questions.
Excellent.
Maybe introduce your folks who are with you.
Yeah, Peter Young and then Mary Ann Michaels. Just the two of them.
I miss you do that.
You did.
Oh,
But you didn't tell us what they did.
yeah.
Yeah.
What do
So,
you do?
Mary Ann's our executive vice
I'm the
president. Peter
CFO.
Young is our general counsel.
I'm the one that's responsible for making sure 160 Vermonters get paid every other week.
That's very important.
And Allison is your lobbyist.
Yeah. So I mentioned, Sheldon Houghton, President of Vermont Rail System. A little background on myself. I grew up in Vermont, in the Essex area. I've been with Vermont Rail System for 25 years now. Pretty much done every job from running trains right on up. And I still get out in the field, still get out on the trains. So it's an interesting business. But as Mary Ann mentioned, we employ about 160 folks. 90+% of those are folks that are Vermonters, live in Vermont. We operate about 450 plus miles of railroad as of today. So we have the Vermont Railway, which goes from Burlington to Rutland down to North Bennington and interchanges with the Berkshire and Eastern Railroad at Hoosick Junction. That's one of our connections to some of the major Class 1 railroads is Hoosick. We have our line that goes from Rutland to Whitehall. That's an interchange with Canadian Pacific. That's the Clarendon and Pittsford Railroad. And then we operate the line that goes from Rutland over the Green Mountains through Ludlow down to Bellows Falls. That's a pretty big interchange point with the Berkshire and Eastern as well. So those are kind of the main lines with the hub in Rutland. And then we'll operate the Connecticut River line that goes from Newport down to White River. And we actually have rights to operate south of White River down to Bellows Falls. That connects that line with the rest of the system. And that's something new that happened last year. As part of CSX purchasing the Pan Am Southern Railroad, we acquired those rights to run our own trains, control our own traffic. So that's a big change. We also operate this little line over here in Barre Montpelier up to the granite quarries. See, that line has seen some significant growth in the last 5 years. That used to be pretty light density, just a few lumber cars. Now we're doing on average about 700 to 800 cars of the granite tailings coming off the hill. Going to breakwater projects on the Great Lakes. So a lot of it going out to Buffalo, but we did bring some stuff out to Muskegon, Michigan in the fall for some projects on Lake Michigan as well. So we see that as a growth business, and it has been growing. So that's a really, really good positive. So that's primarily the lines of Vermont that we operate. We have a small line in New York State as well. Comes out of Ogdensburg, goes to Norwood, New York. And then last year we acquired the New Hampshire Central Railroad, which is Holbrook from New Hampshire down to North Stratford, and then Groveton where the old paper mill used to be, down to Whitefield, over to Gilman, Vermont, and in the Littleton area. So that's something we just started operating. So that's kind of a general overview of the system. As I mentioned, hired about 160 Vermonters work for us. Certainly rail is a pretty fuel efficient means. I think one of the statistics we like to use is about 1 ton of freight can move on 1 gallon of fuel about 470 some odd miles. So very efficient means of moving a lot of bulk commodities.
Well, it's a good statistic of train car versus like a tractor trailer. Like how many for each train car, how many trucks are we getting out of the
3.5. Train cars about 3.5 truckloads. So we're about 100 ton roughly on a freight car. So we also host the Amtrak Ethan Allen Express. That's the train on New York City at Burlington, and we host it from Burlington to Whitehall, New York. So and we have a great relationship with Valley Agency Transportation. You know, a lot of work has been done to improve the state infrastructure, the state rail infrastructure, and certainly in the Amtrak Burlington was one of the big ones. There's been projects going on to increase the capacity on the railroad's weight capacity. I'm going to say the old standard was 263,000 pounds in a rail car, the load plus the weight of the rail car. And the new standard to be competitive is 286,000 pounds per rail car. And currently, I'm going to say about 50% of the system is capable of the new standard. Rutland to Whitehall, Rutland to Burlington, and recently Rutland down to Hoosick Junction. And that's the result of the state got a CRISI grant, the Consolidated Rail Infrastructure and Safety Grants. And there's a match component on that. And the support, you know, to be able to make those matches allowed the state to get that grant and upgrade those bridges so we could handle 286,000 pound cars. And that was huge for allowing us to still keep trucks off the road, still get new business and convert some business to rail. Currently, the Green Mountain Railroad running to Bellows Falls definitely needs 286 work. And the line from White River north needs 286K work. And we currently have a customer today that wants to possibly site themselves on that railroad, and the 286 limitation is certainly a cause for concern right now. So anything we can do to support those grants and have that match in the budgets is very, very important. So
did we finish all the Rutland bridges?
I believe this year the record was wrapped up. Yep.
Are
So
we in the 3rd year of Amtrak for Burlington?
in July, it'll be 3 years.
July? Yep. Because I lose track of time.
And in that service, I mean, all the numbers I've seen that you can't put out, it's been.
Yeah, we should be a good reminder. We should get Amtrak in here to talk about that because that, you know, I've taken it once into New York and it was great.
Yeah.
We did a whole field
trip.
In New York?
No, we did like a Middlebury field trip. It was great. You took the whole committee, both Senate and House came, and remember we got on the train, Kurt was there, it was a whole thing.
That was
a while.
just before Amtrak started, right?
Yeah.
They stopped at Shelburne and left the
Yeah.
train. Yes.
Mm.
Yeah, I got on the.
I don't remember the Senate.
Oh, maybe,
Should have, the house in bed.
It was
Did you go through the Middlebury Tunnel? That was a big deal.
Yeah, the tunnels.
But you mentioned that trip, we definitely extend the invitations to do those again, you know, whenever time works, anytime it works, anywhere in the system, we're always open to taking folks out and doing that.
Well, I would suggest that to any member of the committee, if you were headed to New York, as a paying customer, you'd be great. You know, the service is great. And we need ridership.
Yeah, well, actually, yeah, on the,
We would take the Vermont,
yeah,
but it's not.
right,
Correct, we're not.
but you don't do the Vermont,
That's the New
right?
Central Railroad that hosts the Vermont.
Right. And it's actually, those trains are at capacity a lot of times. So,
It's great to see. It's
Yeah.
excellent. We know we are working with Amtrak. They have some grant money they got, that we've been working with them, constantly making improvements on the corridor. And we just finished a big project this year between, Whitehall and Rutland to get the rest of that route with a welded rail. So it's a smoother ride and get the old jointed rail out. And that was completed in December. So hopefully the next month or so, we'll be able to increase the speeds a little bit there.
and how are you with crossing gates? Because
The Amtrak route is entirely crossing.
great,
Yeah, there's, I think, one or two in Rutland Yard, but they're slated for a project this summer.
good,
But the whole, everything in public crossings are all pretty much protected.
great.
And that was one of the things we did do on the CLP. So,
And that's what they did on the other side too.
yeah, I
with
believe
the
so.
crossing gates, yeah.
So, yeah, any questions at this point? That's kind of my general overview.
Do you have any, is there any stick rail left?
Absolutely. On the Amtrak route, it's pretty much all welded rail. There's a little bit left in Rutland. It's going to get changed out this summer.
Okay.
But the Green Mountain is entirely stick rail. And one of the big ones is south of Rutland down to Hoosick Junction, where they just did that bridge project for 286. That is all mainly stick rail from Arlington north. And that, I know V-Transit applied for a grant there. I don't think it happened in the first round, but certainly being able to allow support them to reapply for that's huge for us to really take advantage of that 286 because that is old 90-pound rail back in the Rutland Railroad days. The Green Mountain is stick rail and the Connecticut River line is still stick rail as well.
Did that make it quieter, the welded rail as well?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Who owns the strip from Fairhaven to Albany?
So from Rutland through Fairhaven to Whitehall is us.
Yeah.
And then south of Whitehall is Canadian Pacific. And then in Schenectady, it picks up Amtrak into the Rensselaer
Do
station.
you know if they have any plan to pick that stretch of railroad?
I'm not aware of that. That would be Canadian Pacific, I think, because once you, between Whitehall and Schenectady.
That's the only slow part
Yeah.
going down.
Yeah, well, so you mentioned part of that for Fairhaven. Part of that just got fixed. That part that was slow outside of from Castleton
Yeah,
to that's stuff we just did this fall. So that speed's going to come up, and that's a result of the
but it's
Amtrak line.
the Whitehall, when you get, it's like, oh, that's the slowest part.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm not aware of what CP may be looking at there, what they may be working on, but it is Canadian Pacific south of there. So they get the Amtrak's line, which takes over in Schenectady.
Did they fix the issue in Albany with the building that was going to fall over?
I'm not sure on that. That'd be an Amtrak question where that stands. It's along their tracks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate you coming and speaking with us, and I hope we do hear from other rail providers throughout the next few weeks if we're planning to invite them. But I had a couple questions. I'm in White River Junction. Obviously, I hear the train multiple times a day, and I have a long family history of either working for the rail or being associated with it as a mover of property. My family ran a furniture restoration building business for like 50 years and sent it all via train. So
Okay, yeah.
we appreciate your industry. So my first question is, I hear from constituents with increased frequency concern for noise, especially the connecting and disconnecting noise. And the needing to blow horns anytime there's a disconnection or a connection. And I've run this problem up the chain many times and it's never been resolved. And there never seems to be a person to direct a constituent to have a real conversation about it with. I'm wondering if you would have recommendations where I could send constituents who have noise concerns related to track that you manage.
So this is specific to White River.
I would say I receive complaints primarily from those around White River Junction, but I've also had complaints levied from folks who are in Royalton and Ludlow and Chester, primarily White River Junction though.
So there are definitely multiple railroads here, the area. Certainly through Ludlow would be us. So probably the thing to do would probably to get representatives from maybe multiple of the companies just to talk about things. I mean, certainly the switching activities are part of railroading. I mean,
Totally.
there's not a whole lot you can do to minimize that. I mean, it's we train our engineers the best and make those couplings as slow as you can. But the horn component of it, some of it depends on what the conductors are doing. If they're using hand signals or anything, if they're close to the engine, that may be the quick acknowledgement that the engineer sees what they're doing. But most of the time it's for grade crossings, which is the FRA regulation.
Yeah.
And we have, I mean, that's the FRA tells us you got to give at least 20-second notice. It's too long, so shorten along. And there's nothing that we can do differently there without having essentially
Having a
FRA.
quiet zone, correct?
Correct.
How would we work together as partners to put forward a quiet zone proposal?
So there is a quiet zone from Burlington down to Shelburne that was put in, and it's basically municipalities initiate that.
Okay, so how would you recommend that I support my municipalities who have tried this path and just haven't gotten anywhere?
So have they looked at the FRA websites and the FRA documentation on how to establish it?
Mhm.
So basically, that's really the first part is the municipality drives it, right? And then they have to come up with how the crossings are going to be redesigned. So the horn doesn't have to be blown. And if everything meets federal regulations of railroad, for us, it's not usually a major concern. If that quiet zone is funded and there's funding behind it and the proper, criteria has been met, I mean, the railroad shouldn't have a concern, because you're gonna put, gates in that have every lane blocked. It's not just 2 lanes. And that's how the quiet zone was done in south of Burlington down to Shelburne.
Okay.
So I don't know if that helps to answer.
No, it doesn't, but I appreciate you taking the time to respond.
Um,
And then I guess I had a couple other questions which relate to requirements around the gated crossings. And it sounds like you said every crossing you have is gated
on the
Or-
Amtrak.
on the Amtrak routes. What is the percentage of crossings you have that are ungated on all your routes?
So,
Regardless, because the majority of it's the industry, not Amtrak.
when I say the gate, all the public crossings are gated.
And what do you define as a public?
That's, anybody uses it, right? The general public can use that crossing, right? It's not a farm crossing or a private crossing.
Okay.
So on the Amtrak route, 100% of those have the gates. On the non-Amtrak route, I'd say a good portion do not have gates and just have the single flashers and stuff. And certainly, I think every year there's diagnostics done on crossings that necessitate an upgrade, and there's spending money there to make those improvements. So I couldn't tell you the percentage off the top of my head, other than the Amtrak route, which is the Clarendon and Pittsford Railroad. It's 25 or so miles. And then Rutland up to Burlington, which is 60 or so miles. That's got all the public crossings are 100% gated. But the Green Mountain Railroad, which is 50 some odd miles, those are all just flashers. Likewise, south of Rutland and up the Connecticut River line.
Yeah,
Other than a few crossings in the Lyndonville area that were recently upgraded.
I do have some serious concerns with any ungated crossing, whether or not it's private or farm. We had a death, as you probably know, in Royalton due to an ungated crossing. And while the circumstances may have been beyond the control of a railroad company,
Yeah.
I do think it poses a real risk to the public. And it feels like in the news every day, we see rail-related accidents, and that's concerning as well. And then my last question is just, what can we do to help invest in your system to get commuter rail to be something that's available to us? I'm excited to see that you have this line right here, the piece between White River and Bellows Falls, because my understanding was that was one of the stumbling blocks for commuter rail, was the lack of ownership of sections of rail. So if you could speak a little bit to that.
Sure. So just specific to the White River Bellows Falls, we don't own that.
Oh.
We don't control it. We just have the rights to
You rent
operate.
it.
We have the rights to operate on it. That's actually New England Central, where Amtrak runs on that track today. So yeah, we just have the operating rights to run, a train. But in terms of supporting commuter or intercity rail, I'd spoken about the line from Rutland down to Hoosick Junction, and we talked about that still jointed rail. I know in the state's overall plan that's been identified as a federal passenger corridor. So anything we can do to support grants on that corridor could look at future Amtrak service there. And I know that's in V-Trans's long-term plan, and certainly there's the freight benefits of the 286. plus the benefits of passenger rail, and that would be the track from Rutland South down to Hoosick Junction. And I know there'll probably be the state I would expect would look at reapplying for that grant, and anything we can do to support that match. That would be a big step for both.
Thank you.
Wendy?
Just a question, thank you, about freight. So intermodal, where you actually have something that can pick up a truck and put it on a train, not a whole truck, I mean, the compartment, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, it's not even the whole trailer, just the box, basically. Are you interested in that? Or, because I haven't seen any of that.
It's a great question, and there's a lot of history there.
Yeah.
So, we actually used to have a big fleet of trailers and everything, and deregulation happened in the 80s. That basically initially you could only truck so far out of a railroad terminal, so it allowed you to have a terminal basically on the Vermont rail system. When the deregulation happened, you could truck any distance. So there's intermodal terminals in Albany, in Springfield, Massachusetts, in Worcester, Massachusetts, in Ayer, Massachusetts, and up in Montreal. And so most of the stuff that comes in on a container, they take, like I said, the box, put it on a chassis, they're coming out of one of those terminals because, it's a 3 hours at most again for Vermont. So for us to be competitive on our intermodal is very tough. And, you have to have the overhead lift equipment, which is pretty expensive, and you need to have, maybe 100 lifts a day to really justify that cost.
Really interesting. Okay.
So it's been looked at, certainly, and I think if there were any major potential, it would be the Connecticut River line.
Okay.
It would be perhaps, bringing traffic down from Canada down that railroad somewhere to southern New England, with one of the big advantages being it's all pre-cleared and customs on the train, and you don't have the trucks waiting at the border crossing. So if there were any potential, that would be it. And with the Benel's Falls Tunnel having improved clearances, you can do some of that now. So we've done it on a very, very small basis before, but nothing on a major commercial basis, just because of, you're competing with the trucks in a 3-hour truck out of one of the big terminals around here.
All right, that's
So that-
good. I was just wondering why okay, thank you.
I think the list.
Actually, one super quick thing.
Oh,
I love
Your train
the
gets-
roundhouse is yours, right? The roundhouse over in across the river from Bellas Falls.
Yeah, North Walpole.
Yeah.
That's our car shop. Yeah.
It's a real roundhouse though.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen one before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Burlington, we have our locomotive shop in Burlington.
Is it a roundhouse
Yeah,
too?
has a
Okay.
turntable. So in
Okay.
Burlington, we do all the heavy locomotive repair. And the Walpole location is our car shop, which actually that shop has a special certification to work on, tank cars. Supporting Honda and their tank car fleet mainly.
Wow.
So we have multiple folks down there that have to go get training to do that work. That's our
Okay.
car shop. It's also the basis of our past seasonal passenger operations. So we actually do a dinner train out of Burlington as well. I didn't touch on some of that, but we talked about Amtrak, but we do our own stuff, and primarily now it's a dinner train out of Burlington that we run down to Virgins and back, mainly during the summer for 2 nights, and then in the fall. But we also have recently, the American Association of Private Railcar Owners, they have their own private cars, and they put them on Amtrak all over the country. So every year they've been coming to Vermont with anywhere from 5 to 13 of those cars. And, we've been bringing them up to Burlington, and we bring them down to either Hoosick or Bellas Falls. They overnight in these
Yes.
locations, they go to visit the local businesses, they do barbecues. In the last couple of years, we've actually bring them up to the Northeast Kingdom. We've been laying over in Orleans and in St. Jay, and they really like Northeast Kingdom. They've been up to Jay Peak and everything, but basically these people that own the cars sell them out to tourists from all over the world, and we bring them up here. And the Con River, they really enjoy. So they're looking to do more in the state. They like Vermont. They like how they're received in Vermont. So I think some of those folks are interested in meeting, with some of the legislative folks and what more can we do? How can we promote this? How
That'd be
can we
great.
do things for Vermont businesses? They brought that up to me in October. So some of them, they may be coming around at some point just to touch base as well. But
And you might want to talk to the economic development people too.
Yeah.
Because, those parties are amazing.
yeah.
Right, market tourism.
Yeah. Cool,
So, yeah.
thanks.
Thank you for coming. So,
We have a car for the Senate Transportation Committee.
What's that?
I don't think
Do we have,
Three flights, I don't.
are there any more calendars?
We do,
Yes.
we got some maps too. These
Oh,
are
yeah, that's what-
system maps. These are.
so. You gave us.
The clerk has.
But I'll take.
Leave a
it
few
off.
more with your folks.
Yeah, do you want?
Yeah.
I think, some of the members of the committee would like calendars too.
We brought a whole
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not into swag at all.
We want our own private train car.
Yeah.
Joking.
Were there any other questions on the quiet zone specifically?
Yeah, I'm happy to follow up with you offline. It
Okay.
has been an ongoing, I brought it up when I was in house transportation. I mean, I've been on email chains, phone calls, Zoom meetings, in-person meetings. I probably individually spent hours of my life on this, let alone the people who are truly being woken up in the middle of the night
Okay.
for no apparent reason.
Will we?
So what's the biggest, just the process, is that the?
The noise.
Well,
The
no,
noise,
but
yeah.
why it hasn't been able to advance in the part of the municipalities,
Because our municipalities are small and understaffed, and unfortunately, they can't follow the thread of this. And no one has capacity, and the companies unfortunately don't invest in it, so it means that individuals suffer, so. But you know, I'll just tell them that we didn't quite get the answer we were hoping for today, and that I'll follow up later.
well, yeah, we certainly, can point to some of this stuff, but it is the federal process, right? It's the FRA, that's what drives it on our end. That's who holds us accountable,
Yes. I love the noise.
Yeah.
I miss it when I'm here.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've got, you're the two senior housing developments, so.
Yeah, and it's probably, and in White River, we have multiple, we've got NEC, and depending on,
Yeah, no one
Who it
quite
is.
want to take ownership of it, so it's a kind of a everybody, so.
Right, that's the difficulty when you build downtown. You also have,
You want smart growth, but then you got people who are poor, who are put right next to a train
right, yeah.
all night long,
Well, the airport has to.
So,
Yeah.
thank you very much, and we're gonna take 5 minutes off, and our next guest is waiting to speak. So,
Yay.
yeah,